You're listening to WorkWire, sponsored by Career Club and SHRM. Career Club has a range of services aimed at job seekers with an empathetic approach. Whether you are a job seeker yourself, know someone who is in job search, or an HR professional looking to bring a more empathetic approach to transitioning employees, check out career.club. If you are an HR professional seeking to enhance your skills, subscribe to SHRM and explore their extensive resources. Visit shrm.org. That's shrm.org.
Welcome, everybody. I am Bob Goodwin, the president of Career Club, joined by my good friend, the indefatigable Johnny C. Taylor Jr., president and CEO of SHRM. Johnny, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'd be better if I could pronounce that word that you just took on, or even knew what it meant. Or even knew what it meant. No.
Oh,
I'm
stop.
doing well. It's crazy this time of the year, and it's always nice to have really smart people. And you're one of those folks to talk with. So let's talk about what's on the work well. What's in your mind
So
right
you
now?
you found this one, Johnny. This is really, really good. So the kind of the money quote here is basically no society has ever increased prosperity by working less. And so we'll dig
Yes.
into that a bit, but basically it's around a trend that seems to be catching on internationally. I know the UK and now Germany, but we're talking about the 4-day work week. And
Right.
so uh, just to get folks caught up here a little bit, a top German politician blasted the 4-day work week, saying, again, no society has ever increased prosperity by working less. Christian Lindner, the German finance minister, panned the concept of a 4-day work week. They also did a survey, which is really, really interesting. I think it's kind of telling on where the attitude really lies on this. They interviewed over 2,500 German employees, and more than two-thirds, 73%, surveyed by the foundation showed that they wanted a 4-day work week if their pay remains the same.
Right.
Only
Of course.
8%, this is shocking, Johnny, only 8% of the people would accept lower wages for less work, and 17% rejected a 4-day work week altogether. Now we're going to talk about a TikToker here in a minute too, but just what's sort of your top line on that?
Listen, it's no surprise. And on so many fronts. I mean, I think if you asked people, I don't think this is just a reflection of what's happening now in society. If you asked people 30, 40, 50 years ago, I'm sure the idea of working 5 days instead of 4 days instead of five is, of course, it's attractive on its face. And if you said you would allow me to do that and pay me my same salary, or if I conversely told you that I'd only do it if you'd pay me my own salary, then of course. So in some ways, this was a classic example of data that didn't surprise me. It kind of came down to a big duh to me. Of course, I would expect employees to respond this way. But there are a lot of things to unpack there.
Yep.
As the German former prime finance minister said, there's just no way this math doesn't work.
Right.
And here we are in a situation where understandably people want to make more money, but you and I have discussed this on the WorkWire quite a bit. There's a point at which your consumers are not going to pay for all of this, right? They're like, okay, so you're going to give me less productivity, not more. You want to make the same or more money, and clearly more money year over year. And somehow you think you can just pass this on to me. This is not the big management fight. This is actually the consumer fight.
Yep. Yeah, because I mean, right. I mean, just on its face, 4 days a week for the same pay is tantamount to a 20% pay raise, right? I
Right.
just
Right.
cut 1/5 of it out, but I got to keep my pay the same. So
That's
that's going to be some very, very funky math. And you're right.
right.
The company is not going to take it in eroded profit margins. So they
Right.
have to
Right.
pass it on in pricing to either their B2B or B2C customer. And I'm not aware of a lot of people, including people that want a 4-day work week, that want to pay 20% more for everything just because people don't want to work as much.
Well, and now I want to be fair. There's another argument that says, if we can control for productivity, in other words, if I can get 5 days of work done in 4 days, then why should you care, Mr. or Ms. Employer? And it's an argument, and I think it's fairly interesting. The problem is is, frankly, I would just as soon work 24 hours straight and have the rest of my week off. I mean, you could, human
You do
beings
that
aren't
already,
machines.
except you don't take the
I
other.
do, right? But there are these other little things like burnout,
Yeah.
stress. These are factors, and human beings can't squeeze. I mean, you try to spread this out because there's 7 days in a week. As it stands, we try to give you 2 days off to recharge and get yourself ready so that you continue to be productive and then physically and emotionally and mentally healthy. Now, if you take 5 days worth of work, I don't know if you've had this experience, but whenever I'm, for example, going to be on the road for an extra day of the week, or if I'm going on vacation, I
Exactly.
work a lot harder during that compressed work schedule. And I don't know that that's sustainable, especially in this era where we're talking a lot about people's mental health and their well being. So, yeah, I get it. You think you can do that. And of course, it's attractive that you now have 3 days away from the office instead of four, I mean, as opposed to two. The reality is, I think this has some real strong consequences, long term consequences
Yeah.
for the company as well as the employee.
Well, it's interesting you bring up mental health, because in theory that would be an argument for this. Is, dude, I'm stressed out. And we'll get into the TikToker here in just a minute, but it's like I can't handle all this stuff. I need 3 days off just to kind of keep my stuff together. And I think what they don't understand is the really well made point is like, and everybody can empathize with what you said if you really think about it. It's like, oh,
That's
I've only got 4 days this week. I'm taking off Friday because we're going to wherever. And it's like, I got to get more stuff done in less time. That for me is a stress driver, not a stress
Yes.
reliever, right? And now do
How
this
about
every week because, and
that?
you make a really important caveat, if the productivity doesn't suffer. And that implies that there's 20% slop in productivity potentially, or I'm willing to now work 10-hour days,
Right.
right, to
Right.
cram in the hours to do the work because the workload didn't get less. So
That's right.
something's got to give.
Well, and there's something else that we're learning as well. Sherm has some research that would indicate. So great. If you're a single young person, et cetera, or even an empty nester on the other end, and you say, I can work 4 10-hour days, that's great. But if you are raising children, those 2 hours during the workday, and then you add onto it commuting time on the front and the back end, take you away from your family. I mean, we struggle already making them available to spend time with their children after school. So what was a 9 to 5 day turns into a 9 to 7 day. Think about the impact on your children if you're trying to rear children and give them access to mommy and daddy, right? These are just all of the issues that you've got to factor in. And so this could disproportionately negatively impact people who are raising families.
Hmm.
And that's why this is not as simple as it appears. Again, polls. The average person says, "Sure, I'd like to work 4 days instead of 5 days. I got it." But there's a lot more nuance here. It's a lot more that and we've got to look at productivity gains. We've got to look at mental health, as I've mentioned. We've got to look at morale. I give you something that happened in my shop. We went from 5 days in the office to 3 days in the office. So now we're a wonderful hybrid organization that works well. You'll love this. So we're working hybrid now, 3 days in the office. And the employees in the latest survey said, we don't get to see senior management as much. You all aren't as successful. I can't get on your calendar. We don't see you walk in the hallways. We're like 40%. We're now in the office 40% less than we were because that's what you asked for. You said
Mhm.
you wanted hybrid. And so now there are 2 days a week when I would have had the opportunity to walk through the halls and come see employees and the water cooler, the
That's right.
coffee, the whatever. I'm not there now. So they didn't make the connection that, yeah, I want to work remote hybrid, but guess what? I'm now going to have fewer opportunities for FaceTime with the senior leaders. They just didn't make that connection. They wanted the upside to it and none of the downside to it. And that's what I'm trying to get at with respect to this discussion. Yes, there are advantages, but there's some pretty significant disadvantages that employees haven't thought about. And we as leaders have to help them think about it. And so that's it. Now, let me say one other thing, Bob, and this is really important. I never just pan a bad idea, an idea is bad. It could be that there's some work environments where this will work. And so I want to make sure that those who are listening to the Work Wire know we're not saying no, under no set of circumstances can this work. No more than we said under no circumstances can fully remote employees work. Like anyone who wants to have a very simple black and white answer should not be in HR, because these things are far more complicated than that. Human beings themselves are more complicated than that. But yeah, I would just say that as we and places like Germany and other parts of the world are thinking about this, one, they've got to think about the long-term impact on their competitiveness globally.
Yeah.
Because the world is global, everything is competitive. So countries that say they want to do this have to get pretty comfortable with the fact that they're not likely to continue to be the first, second, third, or fourth highest GDP and, business leaders. Right, got it. And maybe they're willing to make that trade-off. That might be okay. The second thing is we've got to really, really be thoughtful about the long-term impacts on employees.
Yeah. So as a small business owner with Career Club, I'm actually living this. So
Yes.
I've got an associate whom I love and started off 5 days a week. And because of childcare and she's got two little ones, Bob, do you think that we could do an arrangement where I could do 4 days a week? And the workload, my deliverables will not change. Okay, that's cool. And so the pay remains the same because the work output
Right.
remains the same. And again, I really value her. She's a great associate. Having said that, she came back to me later and said, "Hey, I'm just as a mom, I'm feeling like I'm not as much there as I want to be for my kids. Do you think there's any way that we could go to 3 days?" Look, I am trying to be, the
Wow.
liberal, hey, this is a new workforce, do what you got to do. I'm like, that one made me think a little bit harder. But there was also a compensation trade-off. And the other thing, and I want to circle back to the mental piece of this that you're talking about, and just sort of the implications of choices
Right.
is, sometimes we have deadlines. A lot of
Yes.
times we have deadlines, and stuff's got to get done by such and such a date. And she'll be working some kind of funky hours. And this,
That's right.
I work on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, really gets kind of blobby because
Right.
she might be doing something Wednesday night, catching a couple hours, on a Friday, trying to get caught
Yes.
up on some stuff. And so, in general, she does work a 3-day work week, but that has to flex on her side. I flexed a lot.
That's right.
And to her great credit, she flexes a lot because she's committed to doing her best work and meeting her obligations. So again, just for people who are listening, every complicated issue has a simple answer, and it's wrong. And so this
That's
is
right.
a complicated issue, and there's got to be give and take, right?
That's right.
You have to be in a partnership in this and realize that you can't just be literal and legalistic about
Right.
these things. If you're the employee that's seeking the flexibility, you've got to offer some flexibility as well
That's right.
for it to be a mutually beneficial relationship. That's my experience.
I totally agree. And I'm really glad you pointed out the plight of the small and medium-sized business owner. These things clearly work in huge organizations where they are 10, 15 people deep from a talent perspective. And so one person, if I'm not there on Monday, but another 10 people who do what I do are there on Monday, nothing is missed. But the reality is your customers increasingly want immediate responses to their questions. They want their problems solved right away. And so if you're really critical employee, you're a 10-person shop, and the person who really controls the ability can solve this problem is out. Oh, I don't come back to work until Monday, and it's a Thursday. There's a problem. That's a problem for you because you'll either lose the business as a small or medium-sized business, and they'll go
That's it.
to the big player, players, because the big players can give them just in time, responses and services,
Right.
or you will lose employees. So you're put in a little bit of an untenable position. It sounds like it's working for you now. I will say various sectors, and this is sector specific, there's some jobs that just don't lend themselves to
That's right.
this. Some sectors, and if that's the role that you're in, then as an employee, if you're listening, it's not that your company is bad. It may be that you need to go to another company or another
Hmm.
sector. But this idea that we're going to make blanket assertions that, okay, everyone can work 40 hours and they'll keep their salary and da 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 da. Yeah, I like all of that conceptually, but in practice, it doesn't work. So, no, I think this is an area where HR practitioners listening here, I will, be an advocate of don't immediately say no because it's different. So I think it's worth exploring
Yes.
this discussion around a 4-day work week, just because there are a whole bunch of things we didn't think 3 years ago, and I wrote about in my book Reset, that are just different. Okay, so let's say start from how can we make the 4-day work week work, and and for the employees, our customers, as well as our management, for the company, and if you can do it, try it out. But if you can't, don't be unafraid to say to employees, that doesn't work here. So you've got to decide, do you want to work here or do you want to work somewhere else where it may work? This idea that you're going to be everything to everyone is not a good idea.
Yeah, and you've said this before. This is more under the headline of culture. It's not good culture and bad culture. It's just a culture that works for you. And if not,
That's
cool. You don't want to be at a culture
that's
that doesn't work for you. And if it does, cool. Like maybe that's a good place. You mentioned the pandemic, and we'll forever keep coming back to this because it was
yes,
such a Rubicon kind of a thing. But is you know, on the plus side of this is work-life integration, right? And
that's right.
our mutual friend Dr. Andy Garrett, gave me that term instead of work-life balance, because work-life balance, if you're seeing this on video, kind of implies that they're out of balance and they're
Right.
competing with each other. How do I minimize the conflict? Versus integration where they work together. And so I
Yes.
really am glad, for people that have taken stock of what's important to their life and maybe
Yep.
leaving, for a train at 5:30 in the morning to be at your desk at 7:30, and like all of that works for you. Cool. A lot of people decided things like that didn't work for them.
That's right.
And so, I think the broader headline here is flexibility. And you kind of alluded to, different companies. There's no one size fits all. And we'll
Yep.
talk about this on another episode, I suppose. But I read an article.
Let me say this. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I was just going to say the one thing, though, that is flexibility is I love the use of the term, but I found increasingly that employees want you to be flexible. They're not willing to be flexible with the organization.
So
And
let me move on then, because exactly that. I can't believe I just interrupted Johnny. No, but it's like everything is a choice. Everything in life is a choice. And the
totally.
very definition of a choice is there are trade offs, right? I want a convertible with two doors and air conditioning, but I don't want to pay $10,000. That's okay. There ain't a whole lot of those, right?
Hmm.
It's just like, what are you willing to give up to
Yes.
make it work for you? But that's the part that sometimes it feels like, and you're very, very close to this given your role, is it's a one-way street, or it feels more asynchronous. Like I just
Yes.
want what I want. That's too bad what you need. I just want what
Right.
I want. No, go ahead and pick that up.
No, no. I mean, you said it better than I could say it. It's one of those things where I get it. The person who wants, you know, work life balance, and I'm going to use the term because that's what they use. And I too have used work life integration for a long time, who wants to spend time with their family, who wants to do this, who wants to do that. Oh, and I want a 6-figure salary too. And I want a bonus. Oh, and I want great benefits. And I want this and I want that. Like, if you want more flexibility, it typically comes with a cost, right? And you just have to decide how much are you willing to spend, right, to get that. And we all make those decisions. I mean, I'm a CEO, you're a CEO, Bob, of your businesses. Yeah, we're handsomely paid when it works out, but then there are times when you're not. And that's the trade-off. Like it just is what it is. When you hit, you do well, and when you don't hit, you don't do well. There are other people who say, I don't want the stress of that.
Yep.
So I just want, salary and pay, certainty. Then you will likely, in exchange for that certainty, make less money because you won't get the ups, but you also won't get the downs. People just seem to be unwilling to understand consistently that you can't have it all. I mean, and I
Well,
know
so
that's
I want to pick up on
counterintuitive.
I foreshadowed our TikToker Brielle earlier, and
Yes.
I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with this by this time. But she was talking about just it was soul crushing and depressing. This whole 9 to 5 thing, and
Right.
I'm going to barely paraphrase what she said, that she has to leave for work at like 7:30 and like get home at like 6:15, and it's like pitch black out, and like I don't have any energy to do like anything. Wow.
You really can't make it up, right? You can't make up on two levels. One, that you would think that, but then secondly, to tell the world that you think that. I mean, some things are kind of best left in you. I have my bad days, and there are times that I'm really frustrated, but because there are only 24 hours in a day, etc. But the notion that somehow it is okay to tell the whole world, I don't want to work that hard. I just don't want to. And believe that, but I do want to be paid and I want to live a certain way. This is just really all bizarre to me. And you and I talked about it one of the other work wires some time ago about what was the
Lazy girl jobs.
lazy girl. That's right. And I hate it, of course, as someone who's a big advocate of women in leadership roles. Just, I don't even know. I call it something else, but not lazy girl. That's insane. But anyway, this notion that you're actually bragging, celebrating the fact that you don't have much of a work ethic. And I don't know where that's come from, but it's not a good thing. It's not cool.
Yeah, and so what I think, I feel like we're just at dinner. I'm just going to say what I think about this is
Please.
is that there will be a reckoning at some point. Like we had the pandemic, but the pandemic did not have a lot of economic consequences, negative economic consequences. It actually had positive
Positive.
economic consequences to people. And I believe that when we get into some kind of a deep recession or worse or whatever it is that really upsets the lifestyle that people have become accustomed to, and
Yep.
like having to go to like work at 7:30 in the morning and get home at like 6:15 is going to be like you're going to be really thankful you have a job. You're going to be very, very
That's it.
thankful because you're going to have family and friends who are as smart as you or smarter, work as hard as you do or harder, who can't find a job. And you're going to be very thankful for the soul crushing, depressing, and I don't mean that, I'm being facetious. You're going to be very thankful that you've got a job, you've got a paycheck coming in, some company finds value in how you contribute, and that you're able to help support yourself and your family in a meaningful way. It's just to me smacks more of spoiled,
Oh, yeah.
more than anything else. Versus,
Right.
because you think about like our grandparents, who
Right.
grew up in the Depression and World War II and all this stuff, and it's like, why do they call them either the silent generation or the greatest generation? Is because they overcame all these obstacles and they didn't, sorry, whine about having to go to work. I think you've talked about your mom and your like working multiple
Yeah.
jobs and doing all this
But Bob,
stuff and being a great parent along the way.
listen, all of us, forget our grandparents and our parents. You and I lived through the 2008 economic meltdown. And, this notion, that's actually where part of our work ethic came from because it was like, wow, you got to work your way out of this hole. It's
Yeah.
just not going to magically appear. And, we saw something interesting during the pandemic from, I guess it was March until about June. Our country, and indeed most countries around the world where they had, where they had some sort of economic activity, people worked their butts off. Productivity went up significantly, even though people were working remotely. But I tell you why. First of all, there was nothing else to do. You couldn't go to the movie theater, the coffee shop, everything was shut down. So what else to do but work? But the bigger driver that we're now understanding was people were fearful of losing their jobs because remember, we were laying off furloughing, et cetera. So when people said, "Uh-oh, I got to be really careful," this notion of being a lazy girl or boy or wanting work-life balance, I'm going to fool around and not have a job. We've seen
Mhm.
even in recent times that it's just your point that at that inevitable point where the economy begins to slow down and slows down significantly, a lot of folks are going to be, in real trouble if they've not come to grips with the fact that people pay you to do work and they want to not just pay you to do the bare minimum, they want you to actually help them make it through tough times and excel in great times. So this is all coming. This is going to solve for itself. We're starting to see
Right.
for the Fed, we're seeing unemployment rates going up. We're seeing the quit rates go down. So
Can you
fewer and
define
fewer
quit
people are.
rates for people?
Yeah, so quit rates are, frankly, a federal government. What we do is say how often people and how many people just quit their job. So every month we say how many people quit the prior month, and they call that a quit rate. And we had seen at the height of the Great Resignation that everyone was quitting. I mean, we'd seen levels like never seen before. And now that's coming down. People are staying in their jobs because there's fear that there won't be jobs. So that's separate from a layoff. A layoff is you didn't quit, you were terminated. So that's a
Right.
different situation. A quit is voluntarily, I'm just out. And those numbers are coming down month over month over month. And that is, I think, in part because the federal government and particularly the federal regulators and at the Fed reserves have said, we're going to make some of this happen. Like we're going to slow this economy down and people are going to have to wake up pretty quickly to a true post-pandemic world.
Yeah. Yep. 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 The new abnormal, one might call it. So,
That's
yeah. And I just lastly for me on this is that as things slow down, which they will, and productivity gets called into focus, that you're going
yes,
to have more competition for fewer jobs, and so
that's
it's
true.
going to be an employer's market in that regard. And if you're not giving it your best effort, and we've talked about this on previous episodes, the tools and the observations of who's doing what is pretty transparent, and
Yeah,
so those who are contributing will be known and those who aren't contributing will be known, and so it's going to be in everybody's best interest to do your best work, again, in an environment that meets your life goals. And again,
that's
making a ton of money may not be one of them, and that's okay,
that's
right?
that's
That
okay.
just comes with other kind of trade-offs of where we go for vacation and where you're going to college and all these other things. But
That's right.
is there anything, I guess one other thing I'll say is there's not a right and a wrong necessarily in this.
That's right.
It's
Nope.
sector, it's even function within sector, it's
That's
all
right.
kinds of things that will feed into this. But you're just at the highest level. Hey, every company should be on a 4-day work week because employees want it. Probably not a thing.
No, no, and worse, every country. I mean, that's even more fascinating to me is that a whole country is going to go down that path. But you know what? It's a grand experiment like many others that we've done over time, right? And so maybe we're all wrong sitting here 15 years later. Germans are happy, they're productive, their economy is strong, and they took the risk. So again, I'm very careful about saying something is bad on its face. I will tell you, we have enough data to suggest that there's some significant headwinds associated with the 4-day work week, especially as it's understood by the average layperson, right?
Mm.
There's a whole bunch of there's a 4-day work week, and then you got to deal with pay differentials, what 4 days, how much time do you work? Is it a 40-hour week? Is it a 38-hour week? Is it 37.5? Like there's so many, and you said it best. Departments, functions within a department. I know we're getting to the end of the year and I tell my folks, I want you to spend some time with your families, etc. Everyone except my finance department, because I need those books closed by the end of the month. So when a lot of our employees are out, my finance department is working right through the end of the year. I was a lawyer, as you know, in my life and my past life, and transactional lawyers need to close deals a lot of times by the last day of the year. So they're working their butts off. So again, it just depends. And so this blanket, as you've said, commitment to a 4-day work week, a panacea, it's going to solve all problems, is just not the way it's going to work. but really
Awesome.
excited about it.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
we will continue to watch the news, see how these things develop, and keep all of our listeners and viewers, who we very much appreciate, informed and stimulated to think about some of these things in ways maybe you haven't thought about. If you haven't already, please subscribe to us on YouTube, watch, comment, leave a review. Same on your favorite podcast platform, rate and review. It really does help. And with that, Johnny, I will see you on the next episode of The WorkWire.
All righty, my friend. Be well.
Check out career.club for personalized help with your job search. Visit shrm.org to become part of the largest human resources organization worldwide.